So we're going to move on finally to Angela Shapiro and Susan Grant, who are going to talk about higher education and community partnerships, this time from a perspective of gathering the voices and oral history. So I shall ask you to start. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you. If you could just confirm that you can see the slides, okay, please.
Can see it fine.
Fantastic. So my name is Susan Grant and I'm the university's Community and Public Engagement Coordinator at Glasgow Caledonian University. So we've not gone far along the road from Strathclyde now. I feel like we've been all around the UK and now we're settled in Glasgow for the moment. I'm going to talk a bit about the community and public engagement work that I'm involved in, some of the activities, some of the partnerships, and then specifically one of our partners, Gathering the Voices. And unfortunately, Angela was unable to come today to present, so I'm going to try and do her justice, although that's difficult because I won't have Angela's charisma and humour to bring to it, but I'll do my best to share her wonderful project as well. So engagement for the common good, the university's motto is for the common weal, as it was back in our founding institutions, and now for the common good, and that's through everything that we do at the university. Just in case you're not familiar with Glasgow Caledonian University, I thought I'd put up some images just to show you sort of how intrinsically linked it is to the city, right in the middle of Glasgow, and a nice day shot and an evening shot there. And we aim to contribute to society in a way that goes beyond the traditional role of a university, and that really does come from our roots of our founding institutions. I'm not going to go through all these, I know we're going to be sharing the slide later, but I thought I'd just point out some of the things that we're proud of and that would go towards achieving our aim of being a university for the common good. So for instance, with widening access and outreach, many of our students are first in their family to come to university, but also I think that reflects in our staff body as well, myself included. And other examples such as our research strategy being aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and our commitment to those goals has helped us just recently be ranked 69th in the world for the Times Higher Education University rankings. But I wanted to specifically talk about the community and public engagement that I'm involved in. It was formally established in 2012 when we signed the National Coordinating Centre's Engaged University Manifesto. At university, we define this as the varied activities led by communities and individuals in partnership with staff and students to jointly find solutions to societal issues and shape our research, learning and teaching. You can see some photos here of the Citizen Science Day, which is one of the biggest projects that are run pre-COVID, I should say, out in the community. Since 2012, worked with over 600 partners and delivered lots of projects, but do that in partnership with staff and students at the university and staff and students externally. So I like to see myself as making the connections between community and university, brokering those connections, and then providing opportunities for staff and students to get involved in engagement and supporting them to do so. And we've directly engaged with over 22,000 members of the public during that time. And there's two brands that I do this in, it's community and public engagement and STEM at GCU. I have 5 goals that I work to. I'm just going to quickly show you some examples of these. So I mentioned a bit about supporting staff to be involved in engagement. So things like the 3-minute thesis, where you're building skills and confidence to start thinking about your subject area out with your own discipline, and training to maybe be involved in STEM engagement, might be one-to-one support with researchers to work up a public engagement activity, or it might be, you know, a bigger training event like evaluation training and things. Community engaged learning is a big part of what I do. So wherever there's a community project, then I would try to involve students in that. So that might be within their curriculum, or it could be as volunteering. So things like this risk and resilience game that we developed with staff, the students then deliver. Or on the right here was an event for World Diabetes Day, where we did some screening and some advice and management for people who were at risk or who had diabetes. And there's a link to a little film of that event as well. Third goal is around engaged research and co-creating meaningful engagement. Sometimes it's, you know, one-off events, but they're maybe with a partner, a longer-term partner. And sometimes it's smaller events. So things like the talk exchange in the middle there was on Saturdays, different talks in a small community centre in Govan Hill, all around finance. And the one on the left was a much bigger event as part of the Festival of Social Science, the War Game, where we were looking at the impact of social science today and censorship of the media. And so bringing students from modern studies, higher modern studies or college and members of the public in to discuss that. And then the photo on the right is of a citizen science project with young people collecting their own data with voice recordings and photographs. And they turned it into a film called the Rocket Man film. And that's then used for them to make change in their local area and their local environment to improve the green space and the blue space, so the space around the canal in their area. The partnerships are really key to everything that I do, because it's from these partnerships that the projects come, that we develop them together, because there's been an identified need there with the partner or something where the university has a resource or a skill set that it can share with the partner. It's always a two-way thing, as public engagement is. So the Food for Thought talk series, for instance, is with Queen's Cross Housing Association, and we do monthly talks where different researchers come and share their work, and then we all sit and have dinner together, and it's a good chance for the audience to ask questions, to contribute to the discussion, and for researchers to get perspectives that they might not get other places, and for the people to have a social occasion, some nice homemade nutritious food, and just an enjoyable evening. Cricket Scotland's a long-term partnership that I have as well, and that's using sport as a vehicle for social change and for the university to engage with more Black minority ethnic communities in the city. And we do life skills workshops as part of that, bringing different students and staff together. The Glasgow Science Festival is a great opportunity to share our work, our research, and for that engagement experience to then feed into the ongoing research and the teaching that's going on at the university, which is a really important part. And Gathering the Voices is one of the longest partnerships we've had, and that's that I already mentioned that Angela is from, and I'm going to tell you a bit more about that shortly. The final goal is about making engagement more visible, so working on an engagement map to draw out themes and connections, but also I use my social media a lot, internal communications, external stories, blogs, all that kind of thing, just different ways of sharing these stories and hopefully getting more people involved. Of course, like everyone, when COVID hit, then I had to look at how we could continue to do community and public engagement. And initially, after cancelling a lot of the things, we looked at what could continue on an online basis and what we could develop to suit a more online forum. So there's been lots of examples of this over the last sort of 18 months, with science festivals moving online, working with schools over Teams, where we're not in the classroom, but we can get materials out to the classroom and work with the teacher to still deliver a really good workshop, and Christmas lectures, and working with design students to create an animation about pain. All of this is about trying to engage with new audiences, and for researchers, for me to help researchers to share their work with new audiences. So there's been lots of fun stuff happened over the past 18 months. One of the examples that I mentioned already was the Cricket Scotland project, and there's a link here to the case study to show the kind of winter lockdown online engagement that we had, and similar to the school as well, to ensure there's no barriers to participation. We had to be creative about how we got materials together, and then how we got those materials out to the individual homes so that families could then take part in the workshops. So we worked with over 80 kids during that time, and they just had their kind of cricket final just recently back in person again. So it was really nice to go and meet some of the young kids that I hadn't met before. And again, it's different staff and students that deliver these. So I'll work with particular groups to work up the activity, and then they would deliver it with me there, helping to facilitate. Some of the key drivers for us going forward are our strategy 2030, led by the Sustainable Development Goals and their values, the UPP Civic Uni Agreement, that's already been mentioned at the last session, and I know in the notes you spoke about the uni civic role, and Tim alluded to this as well, but perhaps the research circle is already linking in with the Civic Uni network, but if it's not, then I think that would be a really good place for you to influence the Civic Uni agreements that are going on in university and the network, to ensure that adult education remains at the forefront of everyone's minds, because all the universities are having to demonstrate these agreements, which involve partnerships, which involve putting resource behind them to truly regenerate their places that they are in, and to engage with the people that they serve. There's a few other things as well, like the Engage watermark from the National Coordinating Centre and the KF, the Concordate for Knowledge Exchange, which has a principle for engagement within that. And another really exciting thing that I have to look forward to, or that we're working on already, is the Common Good Hub in an area of Glasgow called Milton, which is in the north of the city. There's a little map there on the left which shows the site that there's going to be a new community centre built. So GCU were partners on this grant application, which was led by North United Communities, which is a youth group in Milton, to secure 1.2 million from the Scottish Government regeneration funds to build this new centre. And it came about because of community consultation in the area, where people were prioritising the community centre, and shops is something that they wanted to really see. And so I've started working in Milton over the last month or so. I've run a cook project at the food hub with dietetic students, and I've just this week been doing some pop-up signs at the Milton Community Garden, and that's all a way to just start building relationships, start listening to the community, start talking to people, and so that I can see that from the community and public engagement point of view, when we have the hub there, what I might be able to offer. But yeah, it's really exciting, and it's a bit like what Tim was talking about with the student engagement, the research-led teaching, and how it can fit into the curriculum. So we could have students there running clinics, or we could have students there analysing the soil for the flooding round about the community centre. There's all sorts of scope for possibilities there. So that's something we're going to be working on. And within the slides, I've put a link to my impact report from the previous year with some more case studies, and a link to a podcast and a recent blog that had reflected on community engagement during the pandemic. And there's my contact details as well on that whistle-stop tour of community and public engagement at GCU. Of course, Gathering the Voices, as one of our long-term partners, has provided fantastic opportunities for our students. Gathering the Voices was formed in 2012, and it was originally from a £10,000 grant from Sense Over Sectarianism, but then the university worked with the organisation, and together they received Heads Lottery funding. It's run by 6 trustees, so 3 couples, and they have collected stories of Holocaust refugees who escaped Nazi persecution and who settled in Scotland. And what I love about when Angela talks about the project is not just the stories themselves, which are obviously, really powerful, but also the stories of actually collecting these testimonies too, and the different personalities that come through and things. And there's a little bit of audio here which should introduce the project to you a little better. Okay, try again.
Of my life. Father's last words were,
Can you hear it now?
whatever
Yes.
the government tell you, always take the difficult option.
Recorded over 7 years, Gathering the Voices is a collection of testimonies from Jewish survivors of Nazi persecution. For some, this would be the last time they would tell their story, and others, the only time. Reflecting on their experiences as young people, these incredible lives tell of experiences that most could never imagine. Although their experiences are all different, there's one thing that links all of their journeys.
The way to school was along the canal of the Danube. So I could see the German ships with the swastika sailing along.
It was also very frightening. You didn't really know what was happening. Nobody told you what was happening.
The colour of my eyes changed with shock. There and then.
And he says, I tell you, I heard there is a Kindertransport in Vienna. But then we all started crying. He said, Dad, we never want to leave you.
I know that one father took a child out of the train again. He just could not part from her.
There was a lot about the German atrocities, but we didn't realize the extent of it.
We never believed that the world would stand by and watch it escalate to the extent that it did.
How did she manage to survive in Berlin?
It's quite a story.
Tell me the story.
But we were lucky because we actually came to Glasgow with passports, with tickets, on a train. Most of our friends smuggled out
I
of
got
Poland.
a job in Porton Cross.
But this Scottish trait ran through my
I was
life.
so pleased to be alive.
I went to school, went to Shawlands Academy for 4 months.
That's how I got to Glasgow.
I was sent to school right away. I went to Queen's School.
And then suddenly, people told me I was a refugee.
Do you still think of yourself as a refugee?
Yes, I do.
Listen to the captivating testimonies of those who lived through one of the darkest moments in history as they reflect on their time living in Nazi-occupied Europe and their eventual escape to a new life and home in Glasgow. This is Gathering the Voices.
I felt threatened. I felt threatened. I felt threatened.
I'll move on to the
I
next
felt-
slide. But as you can see there, that there's loads of resources on the website to hear the testimonies, but also the educational resources are a really important part of it, because obviously the organisation are conscious that sadly there are many refugees still suffering across the world, and so they make a point of talking about the dangers of racism in all its forms. And so it's really about, you know, making sure that these testimonies, while they stand the test of time and history, they are also used in our everyday curriculum as well, with organisations and with schools. Because Angela worked within the School of Engineering, Computing and Built Environment, the 6 trustees thought it would be good to engage the students in gathering the voices, and not just for the prospects of what could come out of that, but also for the students themselves who may not have you know, engaged with stories of the Holocaust and things maybe since they were at school, and have the chance to meet survivors and second generation people as well. So they collaborated over a load of different disciplines on things like Saskia's book here and coming up with the cover for the book. And this was, the photos are all of ideas for their mobile exhibition, which they have. I don't think all of them are completely practical, but it was really interesting for the association to see the different ideas that our students came up with. They also got involved in the Games Jam. So a Games Jam is like a whole weekend hackathon where people come, they don't find out the theme until the Friday they arrive, and then they have to develop new games in groups. And they stay in the uni, they eat in the uni and everything over the course of the weekend. And so there was a Gathering the Voices themed event, and they came up with some fantastic games, including the Arrival and also Marion's Journey. And you can see in the picture here that many of the representatives of the organisation and who'd shared their testimonies then came for an afternoon tea on the final day to hear about the stories. And they're quite anxious about coming, but they really, really loved it. you can see, well, I know we're conscious of time just now, so I'm not going to play this just now, but on the Gathering the Voices website, you can see some of the games that the students came up with, such as Marian's Journey. You can see Marian there. The most recent collaboration that's happened during lockdown as well is with the Common Good comics. And so the university received funding to turn social enterprise stories into Common Good comics. And there's two for Gathering the Voices. One of the story of how the collaboration all came about, and one of the story of one of the gentlemen whose aunt, he wrote a poem about, and Howard Singerman's voice is actually played during the comic about his late aunt, who sadly died as a child in the camps. There are contact details for Gathering the Voices and for Angela. If anyone thinks that this could fit into anything that they're doing, she'd be happy to do workshops or whatever, or meet up with people, or if you think you could use any of the resources. And I just thought I would finish with something that I hope brings a few of the things we've been discussing today together. This was an encounter I had just on Wednesday of this week with Sikandar Raza, who got in touch with me via Twitter to say that he had studied at Glasgow Caledonian University, which I was aware of, but that he would be in Scotland and could he come and visit the campus again. And he got in touch because of the community work that I've been doing with Cricket Scotland. So he came on Wednesday and I was just so blown away by him. He's so modest, so humble, and he told his story of growing up in Pakistan, his mum and dad working really hard to give him and his siblings opportunities. He came to Glasgow to study at college in the south side, and then he went on to Glasgow Caledonian University to study engineering. And it was only really then that he started playing cricket. And through a classmate, he was introduced to her brother and he joined the local cricket team. He went on to play for various cricket teams in Scotland, and then when he graduated, he went to Zimbabwe, where his mum and dad had then moved to, and he's now the captain of Zimbabwe. He's one of the top cricketers in the world, and he's also does amazing philanthropic work, such as with orphans in Zimbabwe. And it just really highlighted to me both the power of sport, but also just what we've been talking about all day today, the power of education, that it's not just about qualifications, it's everything else that comes with it. And I think his story really highlights that. And also his experience of coming to Glasgow and how important Glasgow and Scotland was to him and his journey, and how important the people were as well. So I thought I'd finish it on that.